Welcome everybody. I'm Judith Robinson. I'm from Sound and Music. I'm the head of education, and it's really good to welcome you all to this Listen, Imagine, Compose CPD session. I'm really happy that I'm joined with my colleagues today. I guess you can all give us a wave. I'm joined by Aisha, who is our education coordinator at Sound and Music, um, and then Nancy Evans from BCMG, Martin Faultley from Birmingham City University, and then two of our three presenters are here as well, Kirsty Devaney and Nick Hughes. I'll let them introduce themselves properly when their turn comes. So we've got a mixture today. We've got some food for thought from Martin. We've got some presentations from Nick, Kirsty and Mochi, who will be with us very soon. We've got time for discussion, and after feedback from last time we ran this, we've put a bit more discussion time in, so that and we'll go into breakout groups for those. I know it's good to kind of meet each other and to sort of talk about what you're all up to in schools, as well as to think about, you know, the substance of the day. And the focus of today is music technology. So we're going to be thinking about how music technology is used to support composing, not just in a this is GarageBand and here's the play button kind of way, but thinking more about the composing process and how you can support creativity in the classroom. And we've got some practical ideas associated with that as well. And just a couple of sort of housekeeping things. It'd be great if you could keep yourselves on mute, which I think everybody's done anyway. Thank you. Just to keep the background noise down. I'm recording the session. I hope that's okay, but it's great to be able to share the video online afterwards with anybody who wasn't able to make it today. What else? If there are questions, then do put them in the chat, and we'll get to them. And obviously there's time for chat and discussion anyway as part of this session. So I think that's it, and I think I'm going to hand over to Martin, who is going to give us some food for thought around composing using music technology. Thank you.
Thanks. Hopefully I'm sharing a PowerPoint with people. So a few questions, just a bit of setting the scene and a bit of thinking about what is going on and what's happening type stuff. And I thought it might be worth revisiting some of the slides that I showed last year when we had another one of these sessions looking at technology and its roles, because a lot of the questions I asked then are still pertinent. And there's the quotation from Jennings. I'll read it, bits of it out, because I appreciate if you're looking at it on a phone, it'll be the size of a small postage stamp. The problem is that much of the music software in common usage is either based on notation, using a computer representation of traditional score, or on the sequencer model, designed primarily to facilitate note input via a musical instrument, usually a keyboard. In the first case, standard music notation, mutation I call it then, that's an interesting variant, is just as opaque to the novice user when presented on the computer screen as it is on the paper, while in the latter, the young composer's creative imagination may still be limited by what she can achieve technically at the instrument. And there's some useful things to reflect on what's different about that since 2007. And one of the key words that I think is really important is to think about the notion of affordances. What does something allow you to do? And what does it allow you or not allow you to do? And by allow, the word is affordances. What does it afford you the opportunity of doing? So what can you do with a xylophone? What can you not do with a xylophone? And the same is true of a piano or a guitar or a whole home studio, even if you are holding a cup of coffee. What is it that the tech can afford you to be able to do? And what does it not afford you the opportunity of doing? And these are useful questions to think about in terms of tech. Jonathan Savage talked about the idea of seeking creative approaches to the use of ICT in music ed, develop musical dimensions within the curriculum in ways that would be impossible without the tech. So there's some questions. Obviously, Jonathan was writing in normal times, and we are not in normal times. But what is it that's going on with the tech? What does the tech afford you the opportunity to do? And what could you not do if you weren't using the tech? So I've put those are slides from last time. I've got some new teaching and learning questions for this year. And these are these. So what does teaching and learning in music entail, and why has the COVID situation changed this? And what does the ongoing COVID situation mean for teaching and learning composing in music? Then there's an affordances question based on that slide I showed you a few moments ago. What affordances does tech offer those without access to traditional instruments? So in whatever variety and lockdown you're in, what does the tech offer for kids that don't have them? And then a question for us as music educators. What do I want the children and young people to learn, and what do I want them to do? And how can I operationalize this using tech? And then the final set of questions are more practical questions for today. How can I organize my learners to be able to compose during the current situation? So how can I organize them to be able to compose? Then hopefully a question to reflect on maybe later. What can I take from today's session that will be of immediate practical benefit? And the same question, but in the longer term. And then really to think through what will work with my kids in my school right now. So there's some questions that I hope will be a useful way to set us up, and some things to think about just to get us going in the first place.
Great, thank you, Martin. And we'll come back to some of those questions as a basis for discussion later on. So I'm going to start by handing over to Kirsty Devaney, who can introduce herself. But needless to say, Kirsty is a researcher and a composer and an educator. She wears many hats at different times, and sometimes all at the same time. So over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Well, yeah, like you say, many hats, and I've just had to re-record a research presentation, which is looking at women in technology and young girls in technology, and because it was 1 minute over, and they wanted me to re-record it because it was 1 minute over. So I'm hoping I'm not going to go over this time this time. So yeah, so got a slightly different head on, as I think this is based off some of my research, but as well, like you say, I've got kind of that practical experience as a composer and doing education work, so I bring in a little bit of all sorts in there as well. So I'm getting notifications to admit people. There we go. Okay. Yeah, like I said, so at the moment I'm a full-time research assistant working along with Martin at Birmingham City University with the Birmingham Music Education Research Group, who's a wonderful team to work with. I also run education schemes. So the main one that I run is something called the Young Composers Project, which is based at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. And we've just literally launched this weekend the applications for an Easter workshop that we're going to be running online. So yeah, so it's all go at the moment, but it's all good. So a bit of a disclaimer, I'm a bit of a technophobe myself. And if I could put anything into Room 101, it would be wires. I cannot wait for everything to be wireless. I hate wires. Luckily, my husband is a music technologist, and so he sorts all of that out for me. But as a composer, I have got used to using technology, although I often do like to collaborate with people that know what they're doing a little bit more. But over time, I have started to integrate technology into the education work that I do as well. And I've been involved in a few research projects that look at this. So just as one example of kind of how our experiences maybe influence the path that we go down, my first day I had doing a music technology module at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire as a composing undergraduate. I was sat in front of one of these and it was off. I was in a room full of lads because I was the only female in my group, and my first question was, how do I turn this thing on? I don't know, where's the box? Where's that box thing that has the button that I turn it on? Which was very embarrassing, as you can imagine. But I'd never had access to one of these before. I'd never seen one. My school definitely didn't own Macs. So, you know, that was my starting point with music technology myself. And I think these early experiences, in terms of what we have access to, not only change maybe our confidence with using technology, but also maybe think about how we compose and what we compose. So another example. Now, this isn't a piece of electronic or digital technology, but it is a tool, a piece of technology of which to compose. So again, my first year as a composer, I didn't have access to a piano or keyboard in my room. And there were practice rooms, but you had to sort of battle with the performers. And unless I wanted to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning to use a piano for my composing, then yeah, I was not one to be getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning as a student at that time. So I didn't have a piano. I did, however, have my flute, and that was my first instrument. So I started to compose on my flute. And this has had such an impact on how I compose since then, because of actually that limitation. And I think there is an assumption that, you know, composers probably are good pianists. I'm definitely not. I'm still not. Wasn't really then. You know, I can do the basics, but yeah, definitely not a strong pianist in any sense of the word. So there is this assumption that we will compose at the piano. But actually having that taken away changed how I thought about harmony, how I thought about line or shape or melody, and how I thought about timbre and texture. So as one example, see, if we think about harmony, you might think of chords on the piano, but on the flute, can't really do chords, not very easily, and they don't quite sound the same. So I started to think in terms of intervals rather than chords. And I think it ties in really smoothly with what Martin was saying about affordances, which was not planned, honestly, in terms of how this has influenced how and what I compose ever since. So, like I said, these things can influence then our own experiences, might influence then how we teach. So we can get this sort of cyclical teaching based on our experiences. So for example, if you've always been told that you compose at the piano with chords, you might then expect your students to sit at the piano and start with chords as a starting point. Yeah. So how does technology then feed into this, especially since technology changes so rapidly that our students might have a very different relationship with technology or be very used to different types of technology. So how does that all fit in? As Martin's kind of already mentioned as well about sort of the role of music technology, it has allowed for young people to engage in music education who might not have had that formal instrumental training that is associated with then needing to compose. For example, a good pianist, you should be a composer, you know, that sort of perhaps myth that is kind of branded around quite a lot. It can also offer, the role of technology can also offer kind of what Wise calls more real world music, perhaps sort of maybe what he means more industry sort of standard music, more popular musics. And music that's more culturally relevant to the students themselves. So as I said, my heater's just come on. Hopefully it's not too loud. Do shout at me if it's too loud. So like I said, so I'm going to draw a little bit from my PhD research, which didn't look directly at technology. Instead, it looked at how the composing assessment in upper secondary school affects teaching and learning practices in composing. So technology became one of the themes that started to come from that, and how students and teachers were integrating technology within GCSEs and A levels. So that's my sort of perspective of that, and BTEC as well. The data that I collected was from 2 online surveys from music teachers, along with some telephone interviews. I did 5 case study schools in the Midlands, where I interviewed teachers and students, and I also interviewed 5 what I call composer educators. So they are composers, but they often engage in educational type work. So one of the first things I wanted to find out, or one of the things I wanted to find out many things, a little bit like a magpie, and I get distracted by lots of different things. But I wanted to ask Key Stage 4 teachers, how important is composing? How much is composing? How important is technology for composing? How much does a student on average spend using technology? And this was from one of the results from the survey. So as you can see, quite a lot, a high percentage, when students are composing, they're using technology. Should also note as well that teachers commented saying that this varied massively depending on the student. So this wasn't kind of, for everybody. But nevertheless, lots of teachers also mentioned that composing with technology, that technology was at the centre. It was essential and it was a fundamental part of composing. So it was really integrated. What they then meant by technology often meant two aspects. Again, what Martin has already mentioned, just stealing my thunder, Martin, is the use of notation software, so something like Sibelius or MuseScore, or a digital audio workspace, so like Logic Pro or Cubase. I'm going to be mainly talking about the uses of Sibelius and MuseScore, although some of these things interlink, but I know Nick's going to be talking about DAWs afterwards, so maybe that's a nice kind of break comparison there. So yeah, overall, technology pretty important here. So how did teachers perceive the role of technology for composing? So I'm just going to close the box because I can't see the full quote. So one of the main aspects was about seeing it as a shortcut, that it could allow students to compose quicker than if they didn't have the technology. So here are just some examples of teachers' comments around technology. So, things like cut and paste sections, which allows for minimalism. It's instant. You can kind of edit it very easily. You don't have to rewrite things. And you're able to just sort of print a score at the end. So that's really helpful for an examination, which requires some form of notation. So it can be really helpful in that respect. So in line with this, and another theme that came out really strongly throughout my PhD was this pressure that teachers face in order to pass the GCSE, or to get their students to pass GCSE and A-level examinations. So, and this was sort of tied into the role of technology in terms of not having a large time frame to compose. And the teacher on the bottom here said, we've had a big increase in composition marks, partly due to technology. So they were fully reliant on technology because they'd seen this increase in marks for whatever reason. And like I mentioned earlier, the teachers also felt like technology was an enabler. It could allow students that didn't play, say like the piano, to be able to hear their music and to try things out. So they did see it as an enabler. But is technology always helpful? I'm sure Nick has lots of comments on this. With using these tools, often notation software at this age group, what impression are we giving the students of composing and of how composers work? Is it really culturally relevant or real world? For example, that minimalist quote, is that really how minimalist composers think about their music? Many of them don't like the term minimalist composers anyway, but let's not go there. One of the really interesting comments that came out, or themes that came out when talking to the students, was about the Midi sounds and how these Midi sounds often had a negative impact on their motivation. So here are some of the comments that students talked about. So they said the Midi sounds were horrible. It doesn't sound like music. Doesn't sound very good. It sounds fake. It was clear that although some students had some of the sounds in their head, that it was not being realized by the program that they were using, even leading to some of them disliking their compositions. I really like this quote on the bottom where the student was saying that they were waiting for this wow factor. It was clear that they were passionate about composing and they enjoyed it, but they were just waiting for that moment to be like, oh, my piece, it's great, it sounds great. And they weren't quite getting that through the technology. So on the flip side of this though, I've just popped this in because it's still something that's going around in my head, and it's something I'm seeing quite a bit with the education programs that I run, is that some students have begun to compose for Sibelius really well. Like they're able to actually make Sibelius sound pretty good. So they're actually starting to compose for the functions of the software or the limitations of the software. Again, maybe it's linking back to that affordances, maybe. So for example, one of the, when I spoke to the composer educators, one of them talked about how they see lots of students doing things like using pizzicato strings, because pizzicato strings sounds quite a lot better than arco strings using something like Sibelius. So it's just an interesting thing I'm pondering at the moment. Whilst talking to the composer educators, they really stress the importance of the learning that can come from having live performances or live opportunities to hear their music live. Now, obviously, this is not possible in all schools and all situations to have, you know, an orchestra just in the cupboard that you can just get out and just say, could you play this? Although I think some of my students sometimes think I have that resource myself when they come to me with huge things. So one of the things that we can reflect on is how can we think about the students' opportunities in terms of hearing live music, even at the moment it's even more challenging and tricky. All of this data was before COVID. And do we perhaps, as adult musicians and music educators, are we able to work past the MIDI sounds and imagine what it would sound like in real life? Whereas our students perhaps, you know, those comments that I mentioned earlier, you know, they were saying, oh, my piece sounds rubbish, my piece is horrible. It's something I call Sibelius-itis with my students, and this works all the way with my undergraduate composition students. You know, they start to really resent their pieces, and it's like I have to say to them, no, it's not that it's a bad piece, it's just the audio doesn't sound great, but I can imagine if this was in real life, I can imagine how this would sound. So do our students have that ability to imagine what it would really sound like? And if they don't, how do we support them to do that without, you know, having £1 million in the budget to have an orchestra in our cupboard? One of the suggestions that came from the composer educators, and something that they said that they mentioned quite a lot with young composers, is keep it practical, keep it small. I mean, they're quite dismissive of this idea of like Sibelius symphonies and huge, massive kind of Sibelius things, which, to be honest, me as a student, I did too. So I'm not against it at all. But they were saying, you know, even if you've got a duo, or, you know, just write for somebody that you know, write for some peers, write for some teachers, write for a local group or something, you'll learn much more through that experience and working with people, rather than writing these impossible symphonies that are massive, or these big works that aren't kind of possible in the practicality sense of things. So the final aspect I wanted to just theorize and think about, and again, it's just something that I'm working through as a composer and educator, is about the role of music technology and when and where we should go to technology to compose. And again, this is more if your music is intended to have a live element, an acoustic element. Obviously, if you're writing and creating music which is specifically for electronic purposes, and you're utilizing that electronic or the manipulation, it's not really about that. This is where it's kind of that integrated, might have a live element. So many students, teachers in my study and the composer educators, and since and when I talk to people, there's perhaps this kind of snobbiness, I don't know if that's the right word, of you can't go to technology too soon. You have to come up with your ideas on an instrument first, and then you move to technology. But if you do that too soon, it's not good. It's not good. And I'm very aware that you can often see when a student has sat at a computer and just sort of clicked and hoped for the best for some sounds and some music. I think my own secondary school music teacher used to call it button mashing. So, I'm aware that some students, that might not be the best approach. And they need encouragement to do other things and find other ideas. But also, I think this is too linear and too simplified for how to get the best out of all young people. So I want to propose, it's probably not the best diagram, I'm not very good at these diagrams, but a more integrated approach where technology and instruments are combined, and we can start at technology, we don't have to start on an instrument, and we can move to some sort of live element or trying to play around with stuff. Then we can move back to technology, and we can move back again to instruments as we're working through things or as we come up against problems. And this instrument might be you playing it yourself. It might be getting a teacher to play it, on the piano or something. It might be, giving it to a friend. So it doesn't necessarily mean just you playing by yourself. I think that's kind of it. Yeah, I've got some more points, but Martin's already raised a lot of points. So three questions, which may or may not be useful. So how do you encourage students to use technology in Key Stage 4 and 5 lessons? When do you say to students to go to technology, or do you often kind of direct them when to go, or is technology for the whole deal? Are there assumptions about how students should start to compose? And are there possibilities for learning from live performances or rehearsals in amongst all the restrictions of COVID at the moment as well, which doesn't help the situation, but yeah. And that's me. Thank you very much. I hope that all made sense.
That's great, Kirsty. Thank you. There's a lot of food for thought there. I saw one comment with somebody going, oh, I saw one comment which wasn't a comment. Thank you for that one. I'm going to just hand straight away over to Nick, because Nick is going to talk much more from a sort of digital audio workstation point of view. And just to say that Nick is a teacher. You're head of, I'm not sure if you're head of music or head of performing arts in Leicestershire in a school, and you're also doing the Listen, Imagine, Compose Masters in Teaching and Learning at the moment. So this is part of your kind of dissertation, isn't it, for the final bit? You're on the final leg. So over to Nick.
Thank you very much. Right, hello everybody, good evening. I'm just going to set my stopwatch going because I'm renowned for going over time. So there we go. Right, so yes, as Judy says, I'm Nick Hughes. I am trying to get my thing to work. There we go. I'm head of the Performing Arts faculty at Robert Smythe Academy, which is a school in South Leicestershire. We're part of the Tudor Grange Academies Trust. Also AS Music Technology Principal Examiner for the composition paper, and I've worked for Edexcel since 2010. Obviously, I'm doing the Listen, Imagine, Compose Masters course. I've been for a while now. This is some of the information you're going to get is going to be information, part of my research for my final dissertation on that. So let's get cracking. So the first half is going to be on my research so far. I'm just going to pop my window down so I can see what's going on. So this was my research question, and it was obviously, what do students learn about composing and production when sequencing non-original music? So the story behind this is, for those who teach music technology A-level will be familiar with this. On the old specification, they used to be given a song, and they had to recreate it note for note, hit for hit, sound for sound, and make it sound exactly like the original. And that was taken out of the new specification for reasons which I won't go into now. but I remember thinking at the time that I'm sure this is a really useful educational idea that we're missing out on here. So I've started to build it back in. And I wanted to find out really whether it had any impact on composing at all. So the task, as it stands at the minute, how I'm using it, it's the song La 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 by Naughty Boy and Sam Smith. They do get given a score. Obviously, you can't see that, and it's not supposed to be red, it's supposed to be white, and you get more notes than that. So it gives them a starting point. So for those who do read music, it gives them that facility to be able to start and give them a starting point. They know what key it's in. For others, again, probably 50% of my students don't read notation, and they'd just work it out by ear. Obviously, I'd give them starting points, etc., etc. Where would it fit in the curriculum? So this is kind of my year 12 music technology curriculum sort of thing, really. I teach synthesis to start off with, which is important. So we teach synthesis techniques, and then I set them a task where they've got to recreate Enola Gay by OMD, that classic synth, 80s synth pop hit, and they've just got to do the first 30 seconds and make it sound exactly like the original. So they're using their synthesis skills and using their oral skills as well. Then they employ those synthesis skills in a composition. Then they go back and they have to recreate the model by Kraftwerk, but this time using creating the percussion sounds using synthesizers only. They're only allowed to use synthesizers as opposed to samplers, which they can use in Enola Gay. Then they do a drum sample composition, which we start teaching about samples and sampling. And then La 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 is going to fit in there, in between these two composition tasks. And I was going to do acousmatic composition, which Mochi is going to talk about later on, I'm sure. But now, actually, the past couple of days since I've been putting this together and reviewing what the former students said, I'm actually thinking about just spreading this out as it used to be across the whole year. So how do I teach it? How was it taught, or how was it formalized? We do a class detailed analysis. We break the task, the song down into section by section. We deconstruct it completely by ear. We will repeat the introduction 10 times and we talk through it, what we can hear. Then the students go off and do the work. They try and recreate the task in class time, in their free periods, etc. Then they hand it in. I give them some feedback, some video feedback, and then they go back and finish it off here. Obviously, they have this ongoing peer community, which I've since found out is hugely important. And this is what the detailed feedback would look like. This is a particularly detailed one. It's the last one I could find. But this is from a year 13 one from, I think it was a Jean-Michel Jarre and Pet Shop Boys song, which wasn't very famous, but apparently it is. I've never heard of it. But this is the type of detail that we'd go in. What we do is mainly talk about the types of sounds that were there, how they could have recreated them themselves, but also most importantly, go through section by section and say what is the same as the previous section and what is new. And that was an important point, I think, that came out of this. So this is the literature review, the very, very short version. There's a picture of not me doing the literature review there. The long and short of it is I keep going down this alleyway, and I know the academics are going to be going, there's not just this way, Hughes. But it's about learning the rules before breaking them. And so Bowden said it, Lupton and Bruce have said it. I went down the Wallace rabbit hole, as I called it, and it all kind of comes back to that. And then popular music as well. The popular music, how to learn popular music seems to be slightly different. And obviously Lucy Green is the main writer or academic on that. Bark said it. There you go. Thanks. And Lucy Green, one of the first things she says at the top, one of her chapters on this is listening and copying, absorbing music through active listening. People, when they're talking about observing in studios, they say observing someone and then copying them in a recording studio is the second way to learn. The other way to learn is buying your own kit and trying to figure it out yourself. So that's the short version. Martin, you'll be pleased to know mine's much longer than that. What they said. So this is the research. I had some forum discussions with 8 former students. I've taught them all. They all had a range of composing experience. Yes, thank you. It was the Foundation of Musical Futures. I was going to say that and I forgot. They had a range of composing experience pre-doing this course and doing this work. So I have got a range of different composers here. And they all completed in-depth song analysis. I asked the same questions to all. I've wrote them down, their responses, into different categories. Hesitant composers, they weren't that confident. Fairly confident composers, they did GCSE composing and they kind of got on okay with it. And then the experienced composers. The experienced composers are the composers who compose outside of school regularly. And these two people who were classed as experienced, they've released albums. One's got a deal with Warp Records at the minute. So let's see what they had to say. They said about doing the task, and I think a lot of these did the la 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 task. They said doing the sequence helped them understand more about melody writing for the hesitant composers. They realized why 7-bar phrases didn't sound right. It helped them with drum beat writing, and they actively used ideas from the sequences in their own composing. And it also taught them about textural layer development. Some of the quotes that came out of this are just seeing how pop songs are structured. Can't read the top of that bit now. In terms of like, not in terms of like section by section, but in terms of how the instruments are put together and just going from one section to the next. This is a bit of a garbled one. I've tried to edit it down. I had a really basic look at it. He's talking about melody here, like what we've been taught, to actually applying it and seeing it done in front of you. Because I didn't really get repeated notes. Like if I were to write a melody, the melody just went up and down, and never sort of stuck where it was for a bit. And doing the sequence before doing composing gave them this opportunity to go, oh, hang on, I've done this before. I sort of know what I'm doing. I wasn't starting from a whole basic standpoint of just like, I haven't got a clue. This one was really interesting. I would make it a 7-bar phrase. He's talking about composing at the same time by accident, and it would sound wrong to me. And it wasn't until he started to do the sequence that he figured out what was right and what was wrong. So they were the hesitant composers. The confident composers, the middle grounds, they said that doing the task helped them learn the conventions of the piece, and it helped them inform their own work. They often talked about the use of filterings, so low pass filters, high pass filters, noise, to create dynamic and textural movement. It helped them understand chord voicings better, which I thought was fascinating. And they also commented on how the layers and the texture and how they interacted with each other to create a sense of momentum in the music. Here are some of the quotes from the middle ground. They said, it like sort of solidified, I don't know, maybe the ideas that I had about structure and texture in my head. They said doing the task, they were saying, I had all the tools, I had all the bits from listening to music, but then it's like having to sequence something that already existed, sort of brought it all together and analyzing it. This is a great one. I remember trying to spend ages trying to get the strings right in terms of how they swelled and how they sounded in the mix. Also, like what actual voicings the strings were doing, and like they were quite hidden in the mix. Like I never analyzed the track in that way, listening exactly to what was going on at each moment and all those like tiny details that aren't even like proper musical parts, but how they are adding to the production. The experienced composers, they had a lot to say, so I had to narrow this down. They said that learning the conventions and rules, I didn't give them my literature review before anybody said, I didn't tell them this. They said learning the rules and production values of professional work allows them to now break them. They also said that it taught them about dynamics between the verse and the chorus. That was quite a complex one, but that will be in the dissertation. Opened up a complex understanding of EQ, frequency, timbre and its impact. And it also forced them to resample to reach desired timbres. In other words, it pushed their problem solving, which one could argue and say composing is, to another level. Here are some of the quotes. It just like opened up the abstract world of like frequencies and the instruments that they come from. And I definitely hadn't thought about that before, or like being able to dissect things as intensely as that. So that was definitely like something that opened everything out for me. Personally, I really enjoy now pretty much going against everything I was taught, but I know that. So it's not like I'm going against it, not knowing it. I know I'm going against it. I think it's really important. I've met loads of producers that sort of just make stuff that sounds good. I guess it's like people that can't read music, isn't it? I guess. So there were some common themes though, and they all mentioned this. They all said, every single one of them said that listening intensely to the piece, to analyze it, to remake it was the main benefit. Listening to music, just, you know, living music. I feel like that's what you learn. And they also said that doing the same task at the same time created a camaraderie between peers, because I was asking them the question, why don't I just set them a composing task? And they said, no, doing the same task, having to do exactly the same thing, create a sense of camaraderie, create a sense of, you know, momentum within the group. And this was a great sentence. It also like saved my life during school. Like I would just look forward to doing that every lunchtime. I remember it became a fun thing. I love that line. It saved my life during school. How many times have we heard that? So that's kind of a touchstone on the research that I've been doing. And then I just thought I'd spend a bit of time talking about things that I do to aid creativity, or so I think. I'm just going to talk about Key Stage 3 because I'm just going to touch on that a little bit because I think the rest of it's more Key Stage 4 and 5-y stuff. In Key Stage 3, I always give them a template file that contains some music to start them off. One thing I'm finding more and more, particularly using technology and doing this research and investigation over the past few years on this, I think giving them scaffolding and giving them something to go off is absolutely vital. I always used to think I'm going to pitch to the top lot and then everybody else can come up, but I wasn't scaffolding properly. And I'm kind of negating all those, you know, the 80%, whatever it is now, who aren't going to, 90% who aren't going to pick GCSE music. So giving them templates and scaffolding, giving them some note data. Pressing play, it is important. I know Judith mentioned in her opening gambit, it is, we need to be creative, but they need to know what they're doing with that and learning how to navigate things correctly. So here are some things that I do. I use piano roll as notation. And this is something that was groundbreaking for me this year in lockdown. I used it to teach theory because I've got some SEN students that I've really battled with in year 9. They're musical, but it was just like music theory was just, it was killing me. I was just like, I don't know what else to do. And I realized that this was the way forward because they got it. It was great for teaching extended chords. So this is somebody's work from BandLab. They did it at home. You know, there's just 7th chords in there. There's a major 7th. But they were doing it and they were actually creating something musical out of it. These are people who don't read music. One's a singer, that one's a singer, that one's a bass player. And they got it. And it sounded great. It sounded really cool. So I use piano roll as notation. So using that, instead of just showing them on the keyboard, showing them on the piano roll, and just use as many different aspects to do that as possible to facilitate notation. Notation isn't just, dots on pieces of paper anymore, unfortunately. Consequences, Kirsty, I've pinched it. You know I've pinched it. I love it. It's brilliant. I learned this at a master session that Kirsty was running. And I just went off with it and just did this with it. And my students love it. Composition consequences. It can be used with any year group. Great for all abilities of composers. It's a great big team effort. There's such a great vibe in the room when it gets to the end. It opens up inquiring minds really well. Having a listening part at the end is great because they get to hear where the piece went. So what happens is they sit down at a computer. I put this on the screen, create a chord patch, create a chord sequence, use some synths, explore tempo, put a rhythm on the part, record it in, click it in, however they want to do it. Stand up, move to the computer to the right. So they stand up, move to the computer to the right. Now they've inherited somebody else's chord sequence. Right, put a drum beat underneath it. Use any sounds you want. Do it at the same tempo. You can write in any style if you want, if you want to. Oh yeah, nice one, Kirsten. Yeah. And then they get up, they stand up, they go to the right, they go to the next computer on the right. Bass line, create a growling synth bass line. Obviously, you can make this as simple. I mean, this was a year 12 one, so you can do this as simple as you like. So they write a bass line, what's underneath there. They get up, they stand to the next computer. Now they've inherited a bass line, a chord sequence, a drum beat. Right, write a riff over the top. Any sound, doesn't matter. You might want to have a riff. You might want to put a melody on it. Go for it. Next one. Then they go to the next one. And now they're editing. Now they're going to edit what they've got. So they're sitting there with somebody else's chords, bass line, etc. And they're going to edit it. They're going to use texture. They're going to layer it and structure it out. And then they get to the next one. They're going to start using effects and so on and so forth. And then eventually they get back to their own. I mean, I had to edit this one down. You could put as many things in as you want. And they get back to their own. They hear what has happened to their chord sequence and their synth patch. And then they can spend a bit of time editing it so they can go back and change it. So they can change what's there now. They change the note pitches, any part. They can rearrange it, restructure it, modify effects, do what they like. And then at the end, we have a big listening party. Everyone gets up, they walk around the room, and they have a really good chat about it. And the affordances of consequences are nice. Peer feedback, I do this again a lot. I do a lot of standing up and moving around computers. So if they're all doing a composing task, I just put a piece of paper down. They get up, they stand to the right, they listen to somebody else's work. They write down on a piece of paper one thing they like, 2 things that the person could do next or work upon, and then 1 thing that they're going to pinch and put in their own work. And then they stand up and they move along. When they get back, they've got a whole 2 sheets of paper with stuff that people have said is good about their work, things they're going to steal and use, and also 2 things that they're going to that they need to work on. There might be similarities, there might not. Breakbeats, I love breakbeats. I doubt anybody here does AS Music Technology because nobody does it anymore, but for those who do, you'll know I love breakbeats. You can teach breakbeats without knowing what a breakbeat is. There's so many documentaries talking about the history of the arm end break, the funky drummer break, and all you've got to do is get a copy of it. They're all on the internet. Heck, just email me, I'll send you loads. And just drag and drop them into a DAW and just slice them up here. Keep the tempo at the same grid. So this is the funky drummer, James Brown funky drummer, 96 BPM. Cut it there. Oh, I've cut it on the grid there and cut the transient off. But then you can move these around on the grid, then speed up and slow down the tempo, and they can make a piece out of it. I've done that with year sevens, and it was interesting. But I want to try it again. So there are some things that I do. Oh yeah, using phones for acousmatic samples. Again, Mochi's going to talk about this a lot more detail than I am, but this was a great one. I pinched this was from Florrie actually as well, so she's here, thanks. But I've done this year because normally I hand out a portable recorder and they go around the site recording sounds and then they make music out of it. But because I can't give them anything because of the pandemic. I sent them out with their own phones, even though we don't have mobile phones in our school, but I didn't tell the head. And so I said, write yourself a brief. The example I gave was create a piece for toilet and piano without touching the keys. And the piano touching the keys is genius. I just love that. And they just record the sounds. They email it from their phones to themselves and they access it from the computer. Then we look at reversing, time stretching, pitch shifting, EQing. And I get them to explore rhythm because that's the best, that's kind of the gateway in. And the affordances of DAWs lend themselves to creating rhythmical things because they're all on a grid. But hence why a lot of popular music is rhythmical. But such is the way it is. Amon Tobin's Foley Room album is a great one to go from using that. Yeah, I mean, we'd spend what, 3-4 weeks on that at year 12. I mean, you could do that easily with Key Stage 4. So how am I doing? Time okay. So I haven't, I slapped this one. I didn't even call the topic a topic. But these are things that since the pandemic's hit, that have really kind of been drilled home for me about using technology remotely. And I know there's only like a week and a half of it left, but hey ho. But I think it is. I think it's good because so many students, particularly year 10, 11, or 11, 12, and 13, they've really started to get to grips with this technology at home now. The one thing I found with BandLab and Soundtrap, they are great, but they're not without issue because the main issue is bandwidth. So you could have a student at home, and you'll know this, teachers will know this. They've got a Teams call open. They've got 2 brothers and sisters in the next room also on a team call. They've got their mum and dad in another room doing conference calls, and they're trying to stream things on BandLab and Soundtrap. It doesn't work. So it's great for those who have the bandwidth at home, but those who don't, it tends to be a bit of a disaster. Downloading software, I still think is the best way to go, and that's why Reaper and Cakewalk have nailed it. BandLab own Cakewalk now. You can download that for free. Reaper, I think, you need someone who can guide them through how to use Reaper, but you will need to download free VST instruments. And the best ones out there really are these at the minute. So these are quality free things. I mean, if you haven't got these for your students or recommended it, I mean, just get it for yourself. They're brilliant. The Spitfire BBC Symphony Orchestra pack, not with a capital Y in there. It's called the Discovery Pack. It's brilliant. Loads of my students have got this. It is free. It says £49, but you can get it free. You just got to wait 2 weeks for it. And it's absolutely stunning. It's a great symphony orchestra sample pack. And you can put it in any DAW from GarageBand to Cubase to Ableton to whatever. And then there's this that's just been released last year, and this is the Native Instruments. I can't remember what it's called now. What's it called? What is it called? I can't remember. I'm going the wrong way. Sort it out, Hughes. Start, that's it. Complete Start. Native Instruments Complete Start, and it's completely free. I mean, there's gigs worth of stuff there, and they can just get those, load them in. I mean, yeah. Sixth form students can do that very easily. I've guided mine through it. If you can have a go and guide them through it too, you can. I would suggest you do it. But the affordances thing, I will leave till later because that is really important. And I'm going to stop sharing because my time is up.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. That was really interesting to hear how you've kind of developed using a door and approaching it as a musical instrument and learning to use it, and then also and all the listening, and then great to hear all your tips of things that have worked as well. And we will put your presentation on the Listen Magic Compose website, and then you'll be able to access it and download it, get just refresh your memories of anything that Nick's suggested there. So we've got time to break out into some groups for a discussion now. We're going to do that until, the plan is to go until about 5:05 in a discussion. Then we'll take a quick break, at which point we set some homework a month ago, and I have something to play, which is fun. So we'll come back at 5:05 to listen to that piece and take a quick break. But I've set up some breakout groups, and I'm going to ask Martin to put his questions back in the chat box. There's opportunity to discuss again later. So later we're going to talk about what have you heard today and what is useful for you and what you're going to use in your classroom. So this first discussion is focused more on the sort of more philosophical side of the things that we've heard so far. So hopefully you can all see those. What does teaching and learning in music entail? How has COVID changed this? What does the ongoing COVID situation mean for teaching and learning? And what affordances does tech offer? We've had quite a lot of discussion on that. And what do I want the children and young people to learn? How can I operationalize using tech? Okay, so I've just randomly set up some breakout groups, and I'm just going to send you all off now. So enjoy the conversation. There'll be about 10 minutes and then I'll bring you back. Okay, thanks. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. What I'd like to do is we're going to take a break and we'll come back at 5:15. But just before we take the break, or as we take the break, last time we met in January, we heard from 3 people who are sort of teachers and educators who had contributed chapters to a new book called Creative and Critical Projects in Classroom Music, and it's a book that celebrates the 50th anniversary of the work of John Painter and his book Sound in Silence. And one of the projects was looking at the music of Stravinsky, and we set a homework which was to use some of the ideas in this sort of chapter in the book, which is around listening to a piece of repertoire but extracting sort of gestures and shapes and then composing a piece of music based on those. And I'm pleased to say that one person did respond to the challenge of doing the homework, and that was Adam. I've seen Adam here today. So he sent this in. First of all, he sent a PDF. This is his piece called Why Fight It? The steps are the steps that sort of came from Nancy's homework that she set, and then on the next page he made some symbols, which I think must be part of a graphic score. If I'm interpreting this wrongly, then tell me, Adam. So that's the PDF he sent, and then he also, if I can find it, I need to share my screen, that's what it is. So hopefully I can share my screen and we can actually listen to the music that he sent us, that he composed. I think it might be this one. No. Okay, so I'm going to struggle to use my technology now whilst doing it live. So I think what I might do is let you take a break, and I've practiced once already, but I'm going to let you take the break, and then I'll play it sort of as you come back at about 5:15. Okay, as it's a short piece. Great, so quick screen break, everybody.
That's very lovely. If there's any others, please feel free to send it our way. These are really delightful to listen to, and lovely to see following on from the discussions we had. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you or hand over to Moche more correctly, and she's going to talk to you about her perspective.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me. It's been a really, really interesting session so far. I loved listening to all of you, and also to talk to you in the breakout group. My name is Maud Wolf. I am working at De Montfort University. I am a lecturer in education, but really I'm a musician. So I'm a musician, I'm a music educator, and I have two kind of research and practical backgrounds. One is that I'm a singer and do lots of singing research, and the other one is that I have, for my PhD, developed an e-learning environment on electroacoustic music that then made it into a really big project, the ES2 project, which I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to share my slides because obviously one has to have slides, otherwise you don't do a proper talk nowadays. So there we go. You should be able to see that now. Please do give me a thumbs up if you can. Yeah, thank you. So, I called it very pretentiously, enhancing music access for all pupils, because this is really what my driving parameter really is for my work. I want to make every single child participate and take all these brilliant advantages that we all know about that music can have, that they can actually take part in that. And I don't mind where we do that, if we do that in school or if we do that in England, or as in the photo here, in a very tiny village in India where I ran a project once. These two boys are just listening to their composition that we are now a very little makeshift. So that's my computer, and this is a very, very old speakers that they're dug up from somewhere, and it was just an amazing project. Anyway, I'm not talking about that, but I don't mind where we kind of do these things, and but I found it working in very many circumstances. So I am talking about making music with sounds instead of musical notes. And now for many of you, this will be something that's completely normal, because this is something, because you've been in this project and this is going to be, has been introduced to you, I assume, in the past. But some of you might think, okay, yeah, I know about this, but I actually haven't really done that. And actually, really, so far, I haven't really managed to kind of get to that point where I can actually confidently do that. And if that's you, don't worry, you're not alone. This is kind of the majority of music teachers that I have worked with, kind of are in this position to start with. And I want to give you a bit of reasoning of why we need to do that, or why this is a good idea to do this. So why would we actually compose it with sounds? How do we actually compose with sounds? And then I'm going to share this resource with you, the ES2 website. I will talk you through it a little bit and show you some associated stuff that comes with it. And then I have the grand task of setting the homework, and I'm already looking forward to that. You see, I am a lecturer. I'm not a teacher, so homework setting is not something we really do. I mean, there's the weekly reading our students have to do, but this is filling me with some inner joy, probably too much. So, Enhancing Music Access is a project that actually came out of my research that I did along the development of this e-learning environment. I have basically, to start with, and during my PhD, I worked with pupils and looked at the appreciation of electroacoustic music within Key Stage 3 pupils. So I was looking at, can they actually do that properly? So, I mean, or is there something inherent wrong, with this music? Can they actually appreciate that? Because, believe it or not, there was no data on that. So there was no data on, can we teach a student in Key Stage 3 about music with sounds? And can they actually learn how to appreciate that? With that, I don't mean liking. Liking is not necessarily coming into that, but understanding that this is art and that this is a way of expression. And I found that those people whose listening changed over the course also appreciated electroacoustic music. And now you can only work with so many pupils. So I thought it might be much better, actually, following my PhD, to work with teachers instead, because you can reach far more through working with teachers. So that's how this project came about. So it aims at making music teaching more accessible for pupils, and then also for those teachers who have to teach music but actually haven't studied it. I know that's probably not you because you're mainly secondary school teachers, but we do know that in primary schools, music teachers get often picked at random because somebody was just whistling a tune somewhere. I'm facetious here, but some people are actually put into the position of having to teach music and not having the background for that, and this is something again that can work in this. And this project really is on kind of has three kind of aims of researching, improving, and sharing, and all of that links to teacher practice. So I'm looking into how can we develop teacher practice, how can we improve it, how can we actually have a forum to kind of share also teacher practice, very similar to how you are doing that here. Obviously, one of the questions of why we're doing this kind of stuff is that we know that there are many benefits of making music. We have musical benefits, of course. We have psychological, personal, emotional, social, and physical benefits of making music. And if you think about your task as a teacher, then you as the teacher really need to ensure that all your students have access to these kind of benefits of music in the classroom, and not just those who already are musical. And we have this disparate group of people to work with in schools, that those people who actually already have all that knowledge and those actually who might think music is not for them. And to some extent, what we are doing is we are kind of developing cultural capital for students. Now, there are many debates about how much that really works and if that is something we can do, is that something we should do, is that something, but to some extent, music and cultural capital go, as knowledge about music and cultural capital do go hand in hand. And one of the things we're doing with this kind of project is to disrupt the old kind of things. You know, you are all interested in technology, you are here, you are listening to this, but you might have fought your own fights on getting this the digital audio station, getting the software, getting the kind of, getting the support you need, getting the computers, getting the iPads, getting the kind of spaces you need in order to actually do that. And you have probably had discussions at some point of why this was necessary. And one of the things we're doing here is kind of really disrupting what is meant to be the kind of classical canon of music. Especially because we are taking away now notation, we're taking away note-based music, we're really just going into sounds. It doesn't matter, but why sounds, so one is we have basically, I've carried out a study with as only a pilot study. So I had 4 teachers who worked with me over a series of weeks, and whom we trained in making music with sounds, and who then went out into the classroom and tried out what they learned and then fed back to us. And they all worked in different types of schools. So we had 2 primary school teachers, 1 special school teacher and 1 secondary school teacher, and they came back, and all what they said was that the engagement in their classes had increased. So all of that was all of this teaching that happened had to increase the engagement, and also suddenly the access to this music making was increased because everybody started from zero. And you might have seen that using technology that most people start from zero. And so we created suddenly a level playing field in the music classroom, and for the teachers this was a new thing, and they really, really liked that. And so there are a few voices from them. So it's not just letting them, as in the pupils, to think a bit more that music isn't always get your instrument out and hit things. So it is actually more to music. And one teacher reported, so we also did body percussion as one thing. So that was a side. So we did body percussion, singing, and electroacoustic music. So they could actually choose, but most people chose sound-based music. This teacher also did body percussion, and they actually said that they're actually given a chance to explore music in a way that they enjoy. This is obviously a different thing, but from my experience, I can see when I go to classrooms and work with children there that the enjoyment rate is quite high. But I should have deleted that from the slide because it doesn't link to the topic, doesn't it? Inclusive music education though means that everybody can join in and there's a level playing field, and that's kind of something that I personally wish for the music classroom to have. And so I talked to you about my PhD research where I looked at PhD students, and I told you that those whose listening changed, they appreciated electroacoustic music more. And they did that through a listening training, which I did with them and which I'm going to do with you in a minute. And what happened was that because they understood at some point that there is more to a sound than just the sound source, that they were able to unlock the musical properties of the sounds and then actually appreciate them better in a piece of music. So in a piece of music that is just made of sounds. And what was missing to start with, what was a cognitive prototype, maybe you can call it a schema, some kind of concept of that this music with sound actually exists. And they developed this cognitive prototype over the course of that study, and that was really interesting to see. And later on in follow-up research with teachers, we found that this is the same thing, that actually those people who actually haven't experienced music with sound actually do not really hold that cognitive prototype, and again need to go through this training. So we developed a CPD model, which is kind of 4 kind of different things. One is the community of practice, something that this project here really enables you to do, where you can actually meet other music teachers and talk about all the creative ideas that you have and all the difficulties of getting these creative ideas realized. There was content and pedagogy content knowledge that was missing. Cognitive prototype we talked about, and then metacognitive knowledge. Also, how do I actually teach myself? How do I think about my own learning? How can I get myself as a teacher so much ahead of the class, basically, that I can actually confidently teach something? And all of that was kind of addressed in our CPD model. And let's start now with the cognitive prototype. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play some sounds to you. And you can do this with your students as well, so with your pupils. And it is a very simple framework within this, what that happens. So you need a few sounds. They should be very different from each other, and they should represent certain musical properties. The first thing you're going to do, so they actually need to know, prerequisite is they need to know musical properties. You have to talk about pitch, rhythm, duration, timbre, all these kind of things beforehand, or you do it in that exercise by kind of explaining it. So you listen to the sound the first time and allow all responses that come and ask for what is the sound source, because the first thing you will see is that people will want to know what the sound source is. And it's an evolutionary thing, I would say, because we often use our ears in order to look out for danger or to listen out for danger. And it doesn't really help you if you appreciate the wonderful timbre of that car that's just kind of coming towards you. You do really need to step out of the way. So that's why we are really hardwired into listening to the sound source. Once you've acknowledged, though, what the sound source is, I find from that it is much easier then to actually talk about the musical properties of the sound. So then you listen to the sound again and ask for the musical properties. I'm going to go out of this presentation and open up this. So this is the first sound. I'm going to play it twice to you. So I'm going to play it first, and you just tell me what it is. So feel free to shout in or use the chat or whatever you find best for you. Just have a look at the chat. Train, wonderful. Yes, train, absolutely is a train. I recorded in Mallorca actually when we were still allowed to travel, and it's a wonderful train that goes over to the France. Now I would like you to listen to this again really closely, and I would like you to listen out for musical properties that might come. So this might be pitch, it might be rhythm, it might be different layers, it might be timbre, whatever you find is the most dominant for you. Rhythm comes, absolutely. Syncopated rhythm. So very, very good. Yes. So we have ta-dum, 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 ta-dum. Yes, we have crescendo, then diminuendo, absolutely, because the train comes and goes again, doesn't it? So if you just listen again. Then we have quite a lot of musical events actually happening. Pitch, says Nick, absolutely, yes. Accents, ta-dum, ta-dum, absolutely. Pitch increases and decreases. Listen again. No. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. There's some distortion in there, absolutely. So in your class, you will probably get something like rhythm. That's all. With this sound, we get rhythm. We get layers because they can hear the kind of train and the tracks. So you are obviously all fantastic and you know all these things very well. You can see what else you can get out of this. But so obviously you know where your classes to think about that. Next one. Frog. Yes, good. I just run and you can think about of them. Good. Sorry about that, Kurt. Ostinato comes. Yes, interesting. So what's the most prominent what's the most prominent thing? Call and response. Yeah. So if you listen from the beginning again. Actually from the beginning. No. Exactly. So, two different pitches and yes, absolutely. So exactly, that's the thing we get. Not many people guess it as a frog for some reason, so that's often taking a while. But exactly, there's some white sound. Well, do you mean white noise? So there is I think that's it might be that the connection is not some in the background. So there's a bit of drone. Yeah, so you get also rhythms in there because you have e. So there we go. I'm going to leave this one out and do this one instead. Anything? What is it? Market, absolutely. Leicester Market, by the way. Very good. What are musical properties? Delay, yes, absolutely. Ostinato. Could you say a bit more about the ostinato, please? There's some delay on it. Yes, I put some delay on it. Multiple layers, yes. And if you think about the cardinal motive, oh, nice. Nice words coming in. Loop, it's not a loop as such, because it's just there's quarter dynamic. Here we go. Let's just listen to it again. With they kind of come, sounds like singing. Any big balls to pound the ball. So you have pitch, you have fantastic words there, absolutely, and you have a little bit of background noise as well, where you have listen again. So this is the very last one. What is it? Good. So you're probably the first group I've worked with. They've got that so fast. Yes, it's a reversed ping pong sound. Excellent. Very good. So again, listen to the rhythm, pitch, duration, layers, all these kind of different musical properties. staccato in there. Long attack, short release, very good. Each sound gets louder. Yes, absolutely, very good. You're really excellent at that. It's brilliant. So, this is, you could do this longer. You could also do this like over many sessions that you start just to kind of train people to listen to actually the different musical parameters, properties, I mean, that you have in sound. Going back to the presentation for a second, there are many ways of doing this, you know. So this is one way that I found works really well for me. And basically what you could do after this listening training is introducing students to making music with sounds. So for that, I'm sharing with you now the ES2 website. ES2 stands for Electroacoustic Resource Site 2, and this is because it's the second. So the first one is for academics and composers. This one is the pedagogic project to that. Now, before you think that I'm the only person who is doing the ES2 website, that's not true. I did my PhD, I did the prototype, I kind of figured out how it might work. And then we got a big project together, which has all been led by Professor Lee Landy at the Music Technology and Innovation Research Center, which is now called Institute for Sonic Arts, Creative Sonic Arts, something like that. I always get that wrong. But they're still at DMU and a fantastic group of people to work with. Lee has been always the head of the project and really owns it. And I have worked in the project. But as I said, it's based on my PhD research. Originally, I developed it for Key Stage 3, but it is definitely usable after that, especially if you haven't covered it, and also before, because it's really just addressing novices. In terms of tone of voice, I still think Key Stage 3 probably benefits most, but if you have a good rapport to your Key Stage 4 people, you will know if there's something for them. You judge, basically. And it comes with a learning environment, and then with teachers packs that I have written that are accompanying every single step on this website, and link it to the curriculum. I'm going to show you this. And it has a bespoke software that we developed. Oh, and it's all for free. So you can just get it, you can just use it, and please do. And if you do, let me know. So, because we love to hear about that. Thanks, Nick. Super. Yes, we unfortunately after that we had a bit of a server attack, and it had to kind of basically start from scratch again and redo it all. And we have just gone online, I think, a few months ago. So it's free of charge to use for you. It's been translated into many different languages. So in case you know international colleagues, please do also recommend it. So I'm going to go back into my, not this one. I'm going to go back into here. So this is how it looks like. And I have already opened it. So let's just go here. So basically that's the front page, the start page, the home page. And by the way, if I'm looking over there, I'm not ignoring you. It's just that I've worked with two screens. The camera's here and I'm looking over there. And so you have different courses that you can, so we have split it in create, learn, and listen. However, when you are under learn, you kind of link back into these, you know, these are not separated out. And we have basically come up with a series of courses. There is a level 0, I call it. We call it now Introduction Music of Sounds, but it's kind of, if you think about it as different levels, this is level 0. Everybody could start with that, where we just explain what that is. And then we have real world sounds, manipulated sound, and generated sound as different headers. And we have one short project also on noise and glitch, if that's something interesting. Real world sounds, manipulated sounds, and generated sounds have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. Each of that has a project that's 6 lessons long. Each lesson we count as 60 minutes. So you will know what your school is like, and you will be able to obviously adapt that. So we have no doubt on that. We just had to make a decision on how we do that. And I would probably start with real world sounds. And then you can see on the side here what's happening. And then for some bizarre reason today, it doesn't let me go any further before I have not done a quiz, which I am going to ask to be switched off again. I'm not sure where that came from. So I can't show you the next page, but what I can do instead is show you the teacher's pack where you can actually look through everything. So teacher's packs are available for almost all of these, not for the noise and glitch one, and we're still working on the generated sound intermediate. But all the others are now published, and again for you are free of charge available. And I'm just going to show you the one for the real world sounds beginner. So it's just a little bit of blurb, but you can see that we have 6 units. So soundscapes and the sonic environment, sound walks, sound type, sound source, what is this, exploration of sound, soundscape music, and then sonic postcard, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So each of this is actually linked to the national curriculum for Key Stage 3. So if you have to tick any boxes for your school, you can. It's also giving you what the standard resources are that you need, the standard prerequisites. They are not so much for the first level, but it will be a little more in the third level. And then also summary, and then some assessment opportunities. And then mapping out the skills that we expect people to learn. There are always other skills as well. So again, this is not asking, it's not claiming to be complete, but will be probably very useful for you to think about, you know, formative assessment, all that kind of stuff. And then there is an outline of the pack of what we actually do. And then options for cross-curricular activities. So this is how all of the packs work. And then you have these different units. So where you then again have summary, aim, preparation, links to the national curriculum. We worked with the teacher together to kind of get that really right, so that you have the level of information that you need, and also that we make sure that this is all in the right kind of, you know, amount of information, if that makes sense. So learning outcomes are between almost some, so that you can directly think about that. Actually, it's like ready-made for you, and hopefully it works. So, and then we have a step-by-step procedure that you can work through and think about, so with questions to ask and group tasks and all of that. And then you have some tips as well of how you can do this. Now, this works obviously in conjunction with what you can see on the website. And the beauty is that you can read the teacher's pack and then choose what you want to do on the website, give your, and if let's say you are not in a classroom, which might be like right now, but I know 8th of March is coming soon. But if you're not in a classroom, you can just say, okay, we are going to work together through this website. It's already there, you can use it. Equally, you can use it in the classroom and do the same thing. You can give it as homework for them to kind of work through a tutorial. There are so many ways of how you could use it. And each of these projects ends with a composition task. And now you hear the word task and me smiling. You see me smiling. So I have been asked to set a task for you, and I think what would be really nice is if you could think about, so we all can't go on holiday at the moment, you could actually think about how that you could actually write a sonic postcard to anybody. So this is not a new idea, we have stolen that, and we've stolen that from what was Sound and Music before it was Sound and Music, from the Sonic Arts Network, where this project has been very old, but we thought it was so really nice to actually do that. Think about a place you would like to be and take the sounds, find the sounds, collect the sounds, go record the sounds. Maybe actually you can download sounds from the free sound archive, good tip to do that. Or even better, the BBC has made their sound archive freely available for their sound. They call it sound effects, but really what we have is sounds here. And you can download those and you can use those. So you can do beautiful things with that. So basically, there are lots of tips on how to do that in this pack, which is available to you. And then you can also go for the extended learning activity if you like. So you can write a musical postcard, a sonic postcard to the group, basically. So maybe you could do it. So now you can be as creative as you like. You could do it so that each of you are coming from a different part. So maybe each of you would like to do something representative for the place you live. You know, so the village you live in, the center of town you will have available to you. You know, the wherever you think is important to you, and then you could share that out, and you could talk about that next time. And I'd love to hear that. So here is something for you to do. I'm going to show you one more tiny thing. I only need 2 minutes for that, and then I'm going to shut up. I said there is a software coming with this as well that you can use. You can use this. It's called Compose with Sounds, and it's available to download on the website as well. You can. The beauty of it is that it shows all these sound effects in real time, so it's really educational, pedagogically thought through. However, if you are already using a software that you are familiar with and you want to use, you know, just use that. That works equally well. So I've used Audacity for this kind of stuff. I've used SoundPlant for this, which is also quite nice, and I've used Compose with Sounds. If you wanted to, you can listen to some stuff. I have stuff prepared, but I'm not quite sure how I'm doing for time. Could somebody let me know?
We're a bit over, really.
Then I say thank you very much, everybody.
Yes.
You can do yourself. You know, it's a do-it-yourself project. You can listen to loads of examples that you have available here, and then I'm just saying thank you. And if you're interested, there are also some publications we've written about this. But really, it's thank you very much. And any questions, do ask.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mochi. Do you want to? That's it. Great. Back to being able to see everybody else. So that was really interesting. Thank you, and it was fun to listen to your samples. Do you have any suggestions, Mochi? If people wanted to do that exercise, is there a good place people can go to for finding some short samples like that? I mean, I've got a suggestion, which is Sound and Music has a website called Minute of Listening, which is really aimed at key stages 1 and 2, but it would work very well, especially at key stage 3, and that's all those they're sort of tracks that you can listen to, very random in terms of sound art and contemporary music and so on, but they're all a minute long. But you could use that as a starting point. But do you have any suggestions, Mochi?
Yes, I am a big fan of the Free Sound Archive. So it's called freesound.org. So that's something I have used quite a lot. You might want to check. So this is not censored or anything. So this is just anybody can upload any sound. So I suggest you use it and you create a sound bank and then share that with your pupils before you end up with anything people are going to be sorry about. But there are lots of sounds that you can actually download, and they're all not all of them have a Creative Commons license, but they all have stated which license they have, and most of them are available for educational use. So it's a fantastic resource. And obviously I showed you the BBC archive. If you just go in and put BBC sound effects into Google, you get that. I have not looked through it too much, but that's obviously also available. However, the best results I find is if you get, when you are recording the sounds yourself, it is extra work and it takes time, but you are kind of connected to your material, and it's kind of what you really want to work with. So, but up to you, depending on how much time you have.
Great, thank you. So I'm looking at the time. I think we don't actually have time to go out into breakout groups for discussion, but I wonder if we could just let's spend some time together and just think about what's been particularly useful today and what you might take away. I guess what's been useful, what might you take away sort of immediately, and what might you think about for the longer term and your own practice, perhaps thinking ahead to new schemes of work in the next academic year, something like that. So maybe let's just have and use either feel free to take yourself off mute and sort of shout out, or put something in the chat box and I'll read some of them out. Yeah, so what's been interesting or useful today, and what are you gonna try out? Composition consequences, absolutely. The first time, I mean, I've Nick's made his own tech version there, which was great. I've seen it done with a piece of paper where you literally write on a piece of paper and pass it around the room, either on manuscript or, you know, graphic scores. What else have we got? I love how Nick made technology much more physical, e.g. moving around. Yes. Yes, and any questions from the speakers? Collaborative composing, moving around to add to previous ideas. The electroacoustic and how you can isolate rhythm and pitch in other musical events. I like the active listening to acousmatic sounds, and will do similar things with Key Stage 5 to help them describe synth sounds more musically. That's nice. Lots of Nick's presentation resonated. Emma says, I want to revisit some of my composition schemes and do some more forensic listening to contextualize compositions rather than just focusing on abstract consequences. After Easter, totally going to compose with just sound. The website is great, by the way. Question for Mochi, is the software planned to be Chrome compatible?
So the software, we have been testing it for over 10 years on various things, and the answer is I don't know. Because I have been out of the loop of the testing for the last year or so. It might be worth just trying it out. Sorry that I can't be more helpful there.
We can maybe ask Lee about that. I'll drop him a line. Fenella loves the sonic postcard for Key Stage 2 and consequences moving around. I like the, Candice says, I like the real world idea that music is all around us. Mochi loves the expression forensic listening. I'll steal this. Oh, Emma says not consequences, constructs. Matt, I liked the idea of finding different sounds and asking students to identify musical elements that could be heard. Kirsty's thinking about doing the sonic postcards idea. Natasha's going to encourage year 10 to write a mini project for the instruments available, either peers or staff or a local ensemble. Thanks, Kirsty. I think there's lots of scope in sort of having live expert musicians. An idea to write for your friends when composing could create a concert. Great. Okay. I think unless anybody has anything else, then we'll wrap up here. So I'm gonna thank everybody who came today. You've come at the end of a long day, back in school or remote teaching, and yes, to do a 2-hour session on top of a day of remote teaching is you're committed and dedicated. So thank you for coming, and thanks also to our presenters today, Mochi and Nick and Kirsty. Really interesting food for thought, and we'll put everybody's PowerPoints on the Listen and Magic Compose website. We'll send you a link when they're there. The next session is in exactly 4 weeks time, actually, so it's on the 23rd of March, and I'm not 100% sure of our speakers yet, but the theme is progress in composing. So how do young people, your pupils, get better at composing as they sort of progress through the curriculum? I'm hoping that Ali Daubney will be with us. I'm also hoping that Mark Phillips, who is the newly appointed but was also the old Inspector for Music for Ofsted, because he's been thinking quite a lot, I think, about progress and the 3 I's and the new sort of deep dive regime and everything. But he's genuinely interested in what progress looks like for composing and how young composers get better. So I am hopeful that he will be with us. And there's one other person who I've asked and who has said yes. Of course, I've forgotten who that is. And then, of course, the highlight of the session next time will be that in the break we will play any sonic postcards that we get from you. We will play in the break, so that will be great fun and exciting. Look forward to that. And Mark has just said something. I'm preparing some CPD for Worcestershire Hub about progress in composition. Oh, well, maybe we should have a chat then. That would be that would be interesting. Great. So I think that's it. Oh, I wanted to, when you will send the postcards to me or to education@Sound and Music, and we'll do a follow-up email to everybody with all the links to, because there've been so many things mentioned today, and we'll give you sort of instructions on how to get the sonic postcards to us. Yeah, and then one more thing, which is a shout out for Sound and Music things. We run a summer school for young composers aged 14 to 18 every summer, which is in early August this year. It's usually residential. We ran it online last year for obvious reasons, but I'm really hopeful that we can have a face-to-face week. So if anybody has pupils who of that, you know, from the age range, who might enjoy a week's residential working with some really amazing professionals, and sort of just immersing themselves in being creative and creating their own music for the week, then do point them our way. There's an application process, but I would say if they are doing well at GCSE and enjoying composing, then they'll be, you know, just right for what we're looking for. Or if they're working at home, self-motivated. Yeah, so that's a plug for our summer school. But apart from that, I think we should wrap up there, and great to see everybody. See you all soon. Thank you.